Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 8, Episode 5, The Package. Hello everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. I'm doing pretty well. I've got some stuff to get done. I'm doing some traveling this weekend, so I'm not going to spend too much time on banter. Maybe that's a good thing, or maybe you're like, no, we want to hear everything going on in your life. Either way, I'm just going to keep this short. I did have one piece of Seinfeld IRL, a little bit tangentially IRL. I sent our beloved Greg of Greg's Sack Lunch, I sent him a jacket that he bought from my husband. And so I guess you could say he's on jacket watch as that jacket is shipping through the U.S. Postal Service. And also it's a package he's going to be getting. And this episode is about a package. I hope he doesn't refuse delivery like Jerry does, but I think it's pretty straightforward what it is. It's not like he doesn't know what it is. And first of all, Greg, you're not bombable, so there's nothing to worry about. And second of all, it's a jacket, and jacket watch in real life is happening to you. So that's pretty amazing. Another very minor Seinfeld IRL moment for me was that today I saw an apple in my fruit bowl that had a brown spot. Ew, Mr. Apple. All right, let's get into this episode. The synopsis for the package is as follows. Kramer tries to get Jerry a refund for his broken stereo by mailing it insured, but Newman busts Jerry for the crime. A woman at the photo store is looking at the pictures George takes there to be developed. So George decides to spice up his photos. Elaine's record of being a difficult patient leaves her unable to find a doctor who will treat her rash. This episode was written by Jennifer Crittenton, a female writer. Awesome. And this is the first episode that Jennifer Crittenton wrote for the series. All right, in our cold open, we have Kramer and Newman sitting on a park bench. Kramer is reading the paper and they're just discussing kind of silly things, the Bermuda Triangle, how there's not a lot of action there nowadays because of the alien autopsy. It's not really worth going into this whole discussion. It's not that strong of a scene, but they both think the alien autopsy is real. God, I remember that. That was a really weird... It didn't last. I feel like it didn't last for too long, or at least it just wasn't on my radar as a college freshman. But I remember seeing the footage of it. And then pretty soon after that, it was released that it was a hoax. Like someone, it was like an elaborate hoax that this wasn't a real alien. It wasn't a real autopsy, but it did look very real. Whoever put on that hoax did a good job to make it convincing. But I just think it's funny. It did bring back some memories of seeing that. All right, next we are in a doctor's office. Elaine is on an exam table and a nurse says that the doctor will be in with her in a moment. And she sets a folder down in front of Elaine and exits. Elaine picks it up and starts reading it. It's her medical chart. And we hear a voiceover say, "Difficult?" The doctor walks in and says to Elaine that she shouldn't be reading that. And then he takes it from her. He says, "Now tell me about this rash." She starts to, but then she tells him that she noticed that someone had written she was difficult back in January of 1992. And she says, I know that appointment. The nurse asked me to put on a gown and I was there for a mole on my shoulder and I had specifically worn a tank top so that I didn't have to put on the gown. They're made of paper. The doctor says, well, that was a long time ago. And how about we just erase it? So he goes through the motions of erasing and tries to get back to her rash. Elaine calls it out that, well, it was in pen. You fake erased. Well, the doctor doesn't like that too much. All right, Miss Bennis, this doesn't look too serious. You should be fine. And he starts writing something else in her chart and walks out. And she asks, what are you writing, doctor? But he's already gone. The actress in this scene who plays the nurse is named Susan Leslie. She's also appeared in many shows as a voice actor. She's also been in the show Bones, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and we got a Gilmore Girls Seinfeld connection. It's been a minute since we've had one of those. But Susan appeared in 2 episodes of Gilmore Girls. She was one of Liz's friends. Now, Liz was the sister of Luke. And she played one of Liz's friends who is kind of wild and thinks Luke is super hot. But anyway, she's just fine in this role. You know, she has one small moment, but I think she does it just fine. My take on the scene. So here we learn what Elaine's plot will be for the episode. She is a difficult patient, and that has been documented in her chart. I do like that she addresses it with the doctor. She can't even start this appointment unless she explains her side of what happened in January of 92. And then also calling out the doctor for fake erasing. That's a great moment. I like the way it's phrased. You fake erased. And I gotta say, what a shitty ass doctor this person is, which is sort of the theme of this plot for Elaine, but I'll get more into that later. In the notes about nothing, they did say that there was some deleted dialogue at the end of this scene. I guess maybe when the doctor is walking out or when he's already out of the room, she says, "See, I don't like wearing tank tops. I was doing that for you." All right, next we're at the photo store. George is picking up some photos, and the woman behind the counter says to him that she hopes he got that mustard stain out of his shirt. And she just smiles at him after saying that. And George is a bit kind of surprised, taken aback, but then he's like, "Oh, okay." And he smiles. The actress here is Heather Campbell, and she is Photo Store Sheila. She's also appeared in Beverly Hills 90210, Melrose Place, Baywatch Nights, all the 90s hits, really. She has no credits listed past 1998, so maybe she gave up acting. I did try and do a little bit deeper of a search on her, but I couldn't find much. I think she is absolutely adorable as Sheila. It's not really a comedic role, but she's so cute. A couple of things I wanted to say about her that were maybe a little interesting to you guys. So I remember watching a rerun of this episode with my college boyfriend. And as soon as he saw this scene where she just like smiles at George and she's so adorable, my boyfriend at the time goes, "Oh my God, she's hot." And I just immediately got like so jealous of her. I was like, okay, and you have to understand, my boyfriend in college was really considerate. In fact, maybe a little overly so. He never, ever acknowledged if other girls were attractive. He was really sensitive about that. And vice versa. I wasn't allowed to say it either, even celebrities, which was a little bit annoying, but we were both young. I mean, it's just how it is sometimes when you're both super immature, and we were. So it was a little shocking for him to just blurt that out about her. And I hate to say it, and I'm sorry, Heather Campbell, I know you're listening, but I was jealous of you for a long time after this episode. Every time I would see this episode, I was like, oh, he used to think she was so hot, but you can't deny it. She is extremely adorable. Another thing I found when I was trying to, get a little bit more information about where Heather Campbell is or what she's doing, there was this whole theory about her age. So if you look on IMDb, if you look at her profile, her birth year, there's no date, but her birth year is listed as 1979, which is younger than me, which would have made her 16 at the time of this episode. So it must be incorrect. So there's this whole Reddit thread about, holy shit, did they hire a 16-year-old to play a potential love interest for George? But a lot of people on the thread were like, this has to be a mistake. Perhaps she was born in 1969, but it's listed as 1979. And like I said, I think that makes way more sense because she was in 90210 when she was on Baywatch. It was around this time. I just don't think she would have been that young. There were some really funny comments as well about like, oh, well, Jerry must have had some role in hiring her since he had a thing for teenagers. He famously dated a teenager, Shoshana Lonstein, for years, which is creepy to look back on. At any rate, I think she's adorable as Photo Store Sheila, and I will bet that she was born in 1969, not 1979. And that would put her in her mid-20s during this episode. Makes a lot more sense. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. Kramer is standing at the back of his apartment looking at his shelves, and he's like, "What's wrong with your stereo?" "I don't know. What's wrong with your stereo?" Jerry says. He's, "Oh, I traded it to Lomez for some steaks." George enters, And Jerry tells Kramer the stereo works. You just have to jiggle it with this screwdriver. And so he takes out the screwdriver. He's got it up to the stereo. And George takes a picture of Jerry while he's doing that. And Jerry's like, well, what are you doing? And he tells him about what happened with photo store Sheila. She's got this incredible smile, like she has too many teeth or something. Oh, extra teeth. I love that look, Jerry says. George tells Jerry about what she said about the mustard stain. Why'd you take a picture of a mustard stain? That's not the point. Oh, she's looking. Yes, George says. Kramer says, you really need to get this stereo fixed. Jerry says he's tried to, but it keeps coming back the same. And Kramer's like, well, would you want a refund? Jerry's like, well, I can't. The warranty expired. He interrupts him. No, would you want one? He's like, I guess I would be interested. He's like, all right. Then Elaine enters. And she says, you would not believe what happened to me at the doctor's office today. Not the gown again, Jerry says. She says, no. She tells them how she saw in her chart that someone had written that she was difficult. Why would they write that? Well, they've gotten to know you. And she says that the doctor started writing more stuff and he didn't even look at my rash. George suggests finding a doctor that doesn't know she's difficult. Come on, I'm not difficult. I'm easy. Why? Because you dress casual and you sleep with a lot of guys? Jerry says. She just glares at him. Listen to me, you little shh. George cuts that off with a smile, and they smile and pose for his camera. My take on this scene, just the Elaine portion of the scene, I think it's so funny that Jerry right away calls out the gown. Not that again. There's not a ton to this scene. You know, George sort of plants the seed for her to go to another doctor. That's kind of what the most important part of it is for Elaine's storyline. There is also a great blooper when Jerry says why? Because you're casual and you sleep with a lot of guys. There's a blooper where he crunches on the cereal he's eating super loud and Julia breaks and she's like, don't crunch like that. One thing I do love about this scene, I love when Elaine is about to launch into an obscenity-laced insult, but gets interrupted. Sometimes it's, I don't really give a sh, and then the door slams. But in this case, it's the smile for the camera, and that pose is so great at the end. If you just look at Jerry and Elaine, they just really turn it on. They smile so big. I love it. All right, next we're at a doctor's office. Elaine is at another doctor, and she's wearing the gown. The doctor tells her, you really didn't need to put that on. She's like, oh, it's my pleasure. I even have one at home just to throw on. The nurse walks in with Elaine's chart and she says, hello. And Elaine's being super friendly to her. The doctor sits down and says, oh, let me just review your history. Oh, where'd you get my chart? From your last doctor, he says. It's standard procedure. You know, I can just tell you my history. She doesn't want him to look at the chart, of course. He holds up his finger for her to stop talking. He reads for a few beats and says, okay, let's take a look. He looks for a millisecond. That doesn't look too serious. You'll be fine. He gets up to exit, but she stops him. Please, it's really, really itchy. He exhales a very frustrated sigh and he starts writing more in her chart. She's like, oh no. My take on this scene, it's okay. It's a good scene. I like how Elaine is being so accommodating with the gown and being so friendly to the nurse when she walks in. And here we have another shitty doctor ignoring Elaine when all she's doing is, just telling him that she needs help and what's wrong with her. Good Lord. All right, next we're at Jerry's apartment. There's a knock on the door and Jerry answers it. It's a delivery man with the package. And he asks Jerry to sign for it. Jerry asks who it's from. No return address, the guy says. Well, what if I don't want it? Are you refusing delivery? Maybe I am. Why would you do that? I've never done it before. Why start now? Why not? They stare at each other for a bit and the guy leaves as George is arriving. He asks, why did you refuse that? Everyone loves a package. Jerry said it was weird. Crazy printing. I don't know who it's from. What? Do you think it was a bomb? That's not totally impossible. Oh, the ego on you. Jerry's like, why can't I be bombable? Who's going to bomb you? The airlines because of all those peanut jokes? Oh, I suppose you think you're bombable. George says, hey, a couple people out there wouldn't mind getting me out of the way. There's more than a couple. Well, George has more pictures, and he's like, oh, Sheila must have loved these. Apparently in this role, he's standing against a Mercedes that he doesn't own and took a picture with Burt Reynolds, the wax figure of him. And then a picture shows up that's not George's. That's a lot of skin. They can't make out the face, but George assumes it's Sheila. She must have slipped this in here. He holds it up to Kramer as he enters. He says, photo store Sheila. Well, hello, photo store Sheila, Kramer says. And they're all like teenage boys. George goes to exit. Where are you going? I'm going to ask her out, he says. Kramer tells him how lame that is after she goes to all these lengths. You're just going to go, gee, I really like your picture. Would you like to go on a date with me, please? No good. This is the timeless art of seduction. She gives you this picture, you give her one right back. And then Kramer reminds him how, he's somewhat of a photog. Oh, yeah, I like this idea, Jerry says. Next, we're on the street. Uncle Leo is taking out his trash, and he sees the same mail guy that Jerry refused the package from, and he greets him. Hello. Hey, Leo. He says, what's with your nephew? He wouldn't accept a package. Leo says, oh, he wants it. He's just trying to be funny. Here, I'll sign for it. All right, next we are in a cab. George and Elaine are sharing the cab, and she's telling him about how that new doctor started writing more stuff in her chart, and she's itching the whole time. This rash is getting worse. George just tells her to get her chart and change what she doesn't like. You can't change your chart. It's your chart. He says he's in and out of his personnel file at work all the time. You are? Elaine can't believe it. Hey, I've kept the same job for over 2 years. That's not luck. Then he asks Elaine if she's ever sent a racy photo of herself to anyone. Yeah. She reminds him about her Christmas card. Oh, right. The nipple. And George thinks about the nip card for a bit too long. Elaine just stares at him. He says, anyway, aside from that, what did you think of Kramer's work? And she says, I thought he was very professional. Really? Yeah, she's like, I like the picture so much. I cropped out the nipple and I use it for my gym ID. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, it is, she says. My take on this scene, it's such a treat to get a Benestanza scene, always. And in this episode, George is sort of giving her ideas kind of all over the place. See a new doctor, get your own chart. I like that. And what a George thing to be in and out of his own file at work. I thought that was a really great touch. It's like, yeah, that does make sense. George would probably need to do that to keep a job. And the callback to the nipple card is great and very, very natural conversation between the two of them. And this is one of the few Benestanza interactions that's not laced with any kind of contempt. They're not fighting. Elaine doesn't get annoyed with him. It's just very nice, but yet it's still funny. All right, next we're at the doctor's office. Elaine is asking the receptionist to see the doctor right away that the rash is spreading. She says, I'm sorry, he's very busy. Come on, have some compassion, she says. Well, that offends the woman, and she walks away. Elaine takes the phone and rubs it all over her neck. Well, I hope it's contagious, she says. Elaine sees the pile of charts and finds her own and exits the office. She rushes into the elevator, but it doesn't move fast enough. The doors open, and the doctor is standing there with an orderly. Hi, Dr. Berg. The chart, Miss Bennis, and she hands it back. He clicks his pen and starts writing more. Oh, please, no more. The actress in this scene is Shuko Akune, and she plays the nurse receptionist. I actually don't know if she's a nurse. Maybe she's just a receptionist, but it doesn't really matter. She's also appeared in Scandal, General Hospital. She actually also appeared in a sitcom called ER. It wasn't the drama that had George Clooney in it, but this was a sitcom in the 80s that starred Elliot Gould and also starred Jason Alexander, which I thought that was kind of cool. She plays this well. Again, nothing too exciting about the character, but I like her performance. And my take on the scene, when Elaine rubs that phone on her rash, it's the best. And I can't blame her. What the fuck is wrong with all these people? And her stealing the chart and getting caught is funny. It's the one thing that sort of makes sense that she'd get written up for in this episode, really. I mean, okay, she's trying to steal something that's not hers. That actually is believable that she'd get written up for that. But I'm still on Elaine's side throughout this whole thing. She's being treated like shit by all of these medical professionals. So yeah, I'll take your chart, Elaine. Teach them a lesson. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. George enters with a garment bag and asks for Kramer. And Jerry's like, oh, he's not here. He went out to get some steak sauce. Why? George kind of is a little withholding. He's like, just a personal matter. Jerry gets a phone call and it's Leo. Hello. Hello, Leo. You don't have to yell. He tells Jerry that he's got his package. How did you get my package? What should I do with it? I don't know. And George says, tell him to open it. And Jerry's like, I'm not going to treat my uncle like a bomb diffusing robot. And then Leo tells Jerry that he needs to come with him to his cousin Jeffrey's performance at the Mercado. And he's like, yeah, open the package, Leo. We hear an explosion sound from the phone. Later in Jerry's apartment, Elaine is there and she asks Jerry, so it wasn't a bomb? No bomb, Jerry says, disappointed. Well, then what? Apparently he left a can of oven cleaner and it blew up. But he's okay, Elaine asks. Yeah, but the explosion singed off his eyebrows and mustache. He's all smooth. He looks like a seal. Elaine is on the phone on hold and Jerry looks at what's in the package. He's like, is this my stereo? Kramer enters and he's like, oh, you got it. Yeah, what happened? It's all smashed up. That's right. It's been broken during shipping and I insured it for $400. So we're going to make the post office pay for my new stereo? And Kramer's like, it's not a big deal, Jerry. It's a write-off for them. How is it a write-off? They just write it off. Write it off what? Kramer's like, all these big companies, they write off everything. You don't even know what a write-off is. Do you? No, I don't. But they do, and they're the ones writing it off. Kramer walks away. Jerry's like, I wish I had the last 20 seconds of my life back. I have to say, I always bring, if I ever hear the term write off, and it's kind of tax season right now. We've been working on our taxes for the last couple of weeks. And so whenever that term comes up, I'm just like, you don't even know what a write off is. I always have to repeat some of these lines because I think this is such brilliant back and forth dialogue. Elaine finally gets someone on the phone and she's like, what? There's no appointment for a month? Come on, I'm dying here, man. But she gets hung up on. Hello? Jerry says, no luck? She's like, no, and that was Dr. Zimmerman. I'm at the end of the alphabet. And that every doctor seems to know about her. Jerry suggests Dr. Resnick, his uncle's doctor. And she's like, oh, well, he's not listed. Yeah, he's not very good, Jerry says. My take on this scene, I think it's actually very sweet how concerned Elaine is for Leo. I know it's really just to get the information out so we know what happened to Leo, but JLD plays this like in a really caring way, and I just think that's a nice choice. Also, we learn here that Elaine has tried every doctor in the book and none of them will see her. And it also sets up the Dr. Resnick plot with Leo and Elaine. All right, next we are in Kramer's apartment. George and Kramer are talking about his shoot. And George says how Elaine really enjoyed her experience. Yeah, Elaine was a fun project. I enjoyed working with her, Kramer says. And he's using George's camera because apparently he doesn't have his own. He's very impressed with the zoom-in feature as the lens gets longer. He said, all right, let's get started. And Kramer tells George, I really like what you're wearing. George is wearing like a plain white tank top and he's like, I feel fat. No, you're stout. The camera loves stoutness. And he said, listen, we're not going to do anything that makes you uncomfortable. The key word here is tasteful. You just relax and have fun because you're a fun guy. George smiles and relaxes a bit. Kramer turns on some music. George starts posing and Kramer's just yelling out all these encouraging things for him to relax. Kramer suggests maybe George take off his shirt to see his really strong pecs. Well, George lets go of all of his inhibitions, takes off his shirt, starts posing like a confident boss. And we see all the clicks and still shots. Work it, own it. We see Jerry coming out of his apartment into the hallway and he can hear what's going on in Kramer's apartment. You are a lover boy. You are a lover boy. Oh, yeah, that can't miss, Jerry says. All right, next we are in Elaine's bedroom. The phone is ringing in the middle of the night and she answers. A man asks if she's Elaine Marie Bennis. Yeah, who's this? He says, we're with the American Medical Association, the AMA. He needs to confirm the correct spelling of her last name, Bennes. She's like, yeah, what is this about? Goodbye. Hello? What? Get off the line. We're trying to make another call. So she hangs up. My take on this scene, I think it's a funny scene. Great sleepy acting by JLD, yet another talent of hers. I really believed she was just woken up out of a dead sleep. Also, this is Phil Hartman's voice. What a treat. The great Phil Hartman, easily one of my top SNL actors. So yes, he is the voice of the AMA in this scene. All right, next we are at another doctor's office, Dr. Resnick. Uncle Leo is at his appointment and Elaine shows up. He's wondering what she's doing there. She asks if the doctor has seen him yet and he's like, no, but I'm going to ask him about my eyebrows. She's like, listen, you're hairless, you're scared. When the doctor comes in, you just let me do the talking. And Leo agrees. The doctor walks in and he's like, oh, Leo, I understand you had a little mishap. Elaine says, I should have never left him alone. And you are? She says, I'm his nurse. Paloma. Leo says, "You're not my nurse." Elaine looks at the doctor. "He has good days and bad." The doctor asks what he can do for him, and Leo asks if his eyebrows are going to grow back. And then Elaine interjects and says he also has a bit of a rash. Dr. Resnick seems to get a little bit suspicious, saying, "Well, there's been a bit of that going around lately." He excuses himself slowly, says, "Let me just get some ointment," and he exits. Elaine does not like this. This is too easy. Tells Leo to shut up. She says she thinks he's onto them. She looks down the hallway and Dr. Resnick is on the phone. Leo yells, "What about my eyebrows?" Elaine tells him to shush. She takes out a marker and starts drawing on his face. My take on this scene, the elements of this scene are funny. JLD's energy and performance are great. I love how the doctor acts so suspiciously. Shout out to the actor, David Purdom. He's really funny in this scene. I like how he's just kind of like smiling. He's like, "Would you excuse me?" It's like so suspicious. But I have fundamental issues with how the hell this whole thing would have worked anyway. A couple things, like saying that Leo has the rash. I mean, the doctor will want to see the rash on him. So how is that going to work? And then drawing on the eyebrows, I don't know. I know Dr. Resnick, like Jerry says, isn't supposed to be very good, but I don't know. The elements of this scene kind of frustrate me just because I don't think they're very feasible. All right, next we're at the post office. Jerry and Kramer are there, and Jerry asks an employee if this will be much longer. And she says, "I'm sorry, your claim has been red flagged. You're under investigation." Investigation? Newman comes up behind him. "Hello, Jerry." "Hello, Newman." Newman tells Kramer to run along. Jerry might be a while. Suspicion of mail fraud. Oh, Kramer says, "You're in big trouble, buddy." The actress in this scene, the postal worker, is Lynn Alicia Henderson. She was a series regular in ER, the George Clooney one. A lot of ER references here. And this is also crazy. George Clooney is also in that other ER, the sitcom from the 80s. Like, what the hell's happening? Also, she's appeared in Hot in Cleveland, Never Have I Ever, amongst other shows. Now, here's an example of really standing out when you only have one line. She's so happy delivering this bad news. So I really love her performance. Funny and charming. Kudos to Lynn Alicia Henderson. All right, next we're back at the doctor's office, Dr. Resnick's, and he's returned with the ointment. He notices Paloma's gone and sees Uncle Leo with the harshly drawn eyebrows on his face, and he pretty much looks like a cartoon villain. Dr. Resnick tells Leo there's no need to get angry. Calm down. I am calm. And that he doesn't really care for his demeanor. And he starts writing in Leo's chart. What are you writing? All right, next we're at the photo store. George is dropping off his roll to Sheila. He tells her that he really enjoyed his last set of photos. She says, "Oh, I'm glad, George." He hands over the roll and he says, "Shall we say in an hour?" He laughs and points to the sign because it's 1 hour photo. And then he exits. Sheila asks her coworker to develop the role since she's going on lunch. She also asks him about this missing lingerie shot from a frequent model customer of theirs, and he says, "No, I haven't seen it." Next, we are at the post office. We're in an interrogation room. Newman is questioning Jerry, all sweaty under the overhead light and smoking a cigarette, while Jerry is not sweaty at all, sitting across from him. He asks Jerry if he finds it interesting that his friend had the foresight to purchase postal insurance for his stereo. I mean, parcels are rarely damaged during shipping. Define rarely. Frequently. There's another postal worker there next to Newman, looking super bored. Jerry's getting impatient. Are we about through here? It's getting pretty hot under these lights, huh, Seinfeld? Jerry takes a sip of his root beer, saying, "No, I'm actually quite comfortable." Newman asks for a sip, and he's like, "No. Not gonna play ball, huh? Admit it, that stereo was already busted." Jerry's like, "You can't prove anything." He brings over the clipboard. "Is this or is this not your signature?" "No, it's not," he says. Newman takes a closer look. "Uncle Leo? This case is closed pending further evidence." Jerry gets up to leave. Newman reaches for the root beer, but Jerry grabs it just in time. "Jerry," Newman says, and his coworker is falling asleep. All right, next we're on the street outside of the doctor's office. Elaine is instructing Kramer to go in and get her chart and get out. And he wants the scarf that she's wearing. He really likes it, so he puts it around his neck. One chart coming up. And then he confirms it's Bennett, right? She can't believe it. "Bennis, you jackass. My last name is Bennis." He looks surprised. He's about to ask again, and she says, "Yeah." Then he puts his pipe in his mouth and walks away. My take on this scene: we were gifted with a Benestanza scene, and now this treat with Elaine and Kramer. The Bennett-Bennis exchange, it never fails to make me laugh. The way JLD says jackass, it's just funny. It makes me laugh every time. It's so amazing. And apparently Kramer just never knows what names are. First, Susan was Lily, and Elaine Bennett? What? Next, we're on the street seeing Newman, really frustrated, stewing about Jerry, keeps saying his name, Jerry. He walks by the photo shop where Ron is developing George's role in front of the shop window. And Newman sees the picture of Jerry taking a screwdriver to his stereo. So then he says, Jerry, in an evil laugh sort of way. Next, we're back at the doctor's office and on the street. We see a doctor looking at an x-ray in the lobby for some reason, and Kramer walks up behind him and says, I like what you've done there. The doctor looks at him and walks away. The receptionist asks if she can help him, and he says, yes, I am Dr. Van Nostrand from the clinic, and that he needs Elaine Bennis's chart. She's a patient of mine, and I'm afraid she's not going to make it. She says, I see. And what clinic was that again? He doesn't say anything. He just says, that's correct. Excuse me? The Hoffermandorf Neo Clinic in Belgium? Oh, really? The Netherlands? Kramer's just blowing it here. We cut to the outside where Elaine is waiting and itching. Kramer walks out of the building, of course, bumping into the door as he walks out, and she asks if he got the chart. He says, no. What happened? I don't know, but now they got a chart on me, he says. My take: it's a funny end to the Kramer and Elaine scheme. Kramer blows it and makes Elaine more desperate. Oh, and I haven't mentioned it yet, but great itch acting by JLD. Yet another thing in her toolbox of physical comedy. Okay, next we're at the photo shop. Sheila is looking for George's role and tells him she doesn't know where it could be. And he thinks this is part of the game. The dance continues. She tells him if she finds it, she will give him a call. And he says, great, and maybe we can go out and do something. And she says with a big smile, sure. George exits as Ron walks in, and Ron looks at him adoringly. Hello, he says, and George is kind of confused. Hi. Ron stares at him as he walks away, and George looks back like, what is with that guy? So obviously Ron really enjoyed George's seductive pictures. Sheila excitedly tells Ron that the little guy, George, finally asked her out. He's kind of bummed. Really? And then she tells him, I can't find his photos anywhere. Ron tells her that a postal worker confiscated him and that he left his card. We see a close-up of the card, and it just is blank, and it says Newman. Next, we're at the post office. Jerry and George are there, and George is confused about why Newman wanted to see him. Newman enters, super happy to see both of them, and some inconsistencies in the story he'd like to straighten out. Jerry says, I'm clean and you know it. Hardly, Newman says. He has the stereo photo blown up, and George recognizes it as one of his photos. And Newman says this is the proof he needs to haul Jerry out of his cushy lair to expose him. He gets all fired up and starts yelling. His coworker tells him to shut up, and he tells him there will be a small fine. Jerry's like, all right. Well, George wants to go, but Newman says, not so fast, pretty boy. And he reveals a blow-up of one of his sexy shots. Oh my God, Jerry says. Newman thinks the photo is involved in some sort of mail-order porno ring. And he clicks to the next photo, and it's a photo of, photo store Ron with his shirt open, laying on a couch. Oh my God, George says. And Jerry has a few questions of his own. Sheila walks in and starts asking about the photos, and then she sees the two pictures of George and Ron. Oh my God, George. He tells her it's not what she thinks and chases her out the door. Jerry takes a closer look, and he says, the timeless art of seduction. There's a tag to this episode. They are all the way in the country at a country doctor's office. Uncle Leo, Kramer, and Elaine are all in the waiting room. And there's also a dude there with the pig. The dude is played by Dave Mandel. Uncle Leo is complaining about his back, saying that the dirt road really hurt it. Elaine says, just stop complaining and smile. We're good patients. And Kramer is there because he caught the rash from using Elaine's scarf. The doctor calls Elaine back, but before she can go, he gets a call. And he looks at them and he says, yes, as a matter of fact, they're here right now. Oh, I understand. So, again, this doctor has been clued in that all of these people are difficult. My take on this scene, it's, not much to say, just kind of a amusing capper to the episode. Word of their bad behavior has gotten all the way to the country. All right, I'm going to take a quick break, and I will see you on the other side. Breaking news! There is a new hot trend for summer that you need to know about. Keep listening, and it shall be revealed. Are you prepared for those hot days around the corner? You got those tank tops primed and ready to show the world? Well, what if I told you there is another accessory you must be sporting when those arms are out and proud? Stay tuned and I will tell you. Hi, I'm Mia Dallas. You know me from YouTube, TikTok, and multiple 15-second ads before unboxing videos for leggings that lift your butt. I guess you could say I'm an influencer, but I like to think of myself as an informancer because as soon as I find out about new trends, crazes, and all the rages, I get on camera, on mic, and tell all you bitches the tea because that is my purpose. So when I heard about this latest style that is so fire you won't even know what to do with yourself, I was like, ring light, click, camera, click, mic check, click, and action. Are you ready to hear it? You're so going to love this, and it is so easy and affordable. Keep listening. You will not regret it. If I can get real for a second with you guys, I didn't love this trend when I first heard about it, but then I saw it on some celebrities and I was like, okay, totally on board now. I mean, if Zendaya, Sydney Sweeney, and Felicia Rashad are doing this, sign me the F up. Trends, by definition, are short-lived. But honestly, I can see this lasting until the late 2020s, not gonna lie. Okay, are you ready for it? You better be, because I'm finally going to tell you your next look that will turn heads and flutter heartbeats. Here it is. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Drum roll, please. Shoulder moles. That's right. Showing off a mole, or as I like to call it, a beauty mark on your sexy shoulder is what will set you apart from the rest. Okay, I know what some of you are thinking. I don't have a shoulder mole. Well, neither do I, silly, but I just take a marker and draw one. The mole can be on your right or left shoulder, doesn't matter. But the most fashionable position is at the crest of your deltoid, about 4 centimeters from the clavicle bone. Refer to my socials for a step-by-step tutorial. There you have it. Summer of 2024 is the summer of shoulder moles. I'm Mia Dallas, and please be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to my channel entitled, I Will Get to It Eventually. Shoulder moles. Finally, a spot-on shoulder moment. And we're back. There were not a ton of extras that I wanted to include. I did want to point out some of the IMDb goofs that were listed. I thought this was actually a really big oversight. I was like, really, guys? So during the scenes when the stereo is supposedly in the package or has been sent off, the scenes in Jerry's apartment, you can clearly see it in the background, completely intact. So I was just kind of like, that's a really big oversight. Some factual errors that were listed. It's totally against the Hippocratic Oath to refuse medical care to someone in need. And also, you can request your own chart at any time. In fact, it's illegal for your chart to go from one doctor to another without your consent. There are a lot of plot holes in the mail fraud story too, but I will not bore you with the laws about mail. All right, next, let's open Greg's sack lunch. Greg, our most dedicated contributor, has sent his thoughts like he does every week in a big old sack about the episode. This is Greg's overall thoughts. He says, coming off of the little kicks, this episode doesn't do it for me nearly as much, though I do enjoy it. I wish there had been a bit more crossover between Elaine and everyone else, and while Elaine's plot here with the doctors is funny, it's really only saved at the very end when Uncle Leo is the one who helps her out. Yeah, I'll get more into this. First of all, I agree. Coming off of the little kicks, which I called the episode that JLD finally deserved, to this episode, it's a little bit of a downgrade, but yeah, I'll get more into what I think about the whole plot. But I agree, it's an enjoyable episode, but I just wish they could have done a few things a little better. Next in Greg's sack are his favorite scenes and Elaine moments. He says, I love when Elaine goes to the new doctor and tries to be super accommodating by wearing the gown. That rings true to life because if somebody called you difficult, you would try your best not to let that evaluation of you continue. I like how she says she wears the gown at home since it's so comfy. Yeah, I love that too. That's a great touch there. Like she's like, no, I'm going to be as easy as possible. He says JLD's delivery of the line, oh, please, no more, when she gets caught stealing her chart and the doctor starts writing again is perfect. Yeah. We get like a tinge of weepy Elaine a little bit. It is great. Greg goes on to say the most memorable part of this episode for Elaine is when she's with Uncle Leo at the doctor's and she draws on the fake eyebrows. That visual is hilarious. And I like how she introduces herself as her nurse Paloma. Since Uncle Leo's scenes are 99% of the time with Jerry, it was fun to see him and Elaine interact so randomly. Yes, I agree. I didn't mention that, but yeah, we get a Benestanza, we get Elaine and Kramer, but we didn't talk about Elaine and Leo. When does that ever happen? So yeah. I mean, like I said, I was very sweet how concerned she was about him. So maybe she has a soft spot for Leo, and maybe vice versa, like he was definitely kind of glad to see her at his appointment. So I thought that was sweet. And yeah, I didn't talk about it, but they're ridiculous, but the eyebrows she draws on, I can hear my mom laughing because I remember watching this with my mom at a certain point and she just could not stop laughing at what Leo looks like with those eyebrows. It is hilarious. Such a great visual gag. All right, next is Greg's scene swap idea. He says, while everything in this episode is fine and everyone gets a nice chunk of the episode, I would have just liked more crossover with Elaine and the others. Her story would be a more fun one if there was more to it than her just going doctor to doctor. While George does give her the idea to steal her chart and change what she doesn't like, I would have liked her to have enlisted him to actually participate in the execution of that plan. Kramer does come in to help her, as he usually does, but she doesn't get to be in those scenes, so it eats into what she gets to do. Also, while the Newman postal insurance fraud story is somewhat funny, it goes on for way too long just to sort of let Wayne Knight spoof his own character from Basic Instinct. Usually, my only issues with episodes are when a storyline is given too much time while something else happening, usually with Elaine, is given less. Yeah, I agree. The postal fraud stuff, yeah, I kind of I don't really love those interrogation scenes, but you're absolutely right. They do call it out in the extras that, oh yeah, Wayne Knight was in Basic Instinct and he was interrogating. And so, yeah, it is a callback to that. George being involved in the chart lifting, I think that's a good idea for sure. But I do like that Kramer is the one that steps up because, as you say, he usually is the one that will step up to help Elaine. So maybe it doesn't really go along with George to, his personality to go to the trouble. He'll give her the idea, but he's not going to do it. And finally, Greg's extra thoughts. He says, I would be remiss not to mention George's posing for his timeless art of seduction photos. This is probably the most memorable thing to come out of this episode. I have to give it to Jason Alexander for those animalistic moves. Yes, of course. I mean, those photos have been made into memes, the video of it. I've seen GIFs of it. It's great. Kudos definitely to Jason Alexander for that. And lastly, Greg says, I may be wrong, but was that Phil Hartman's voice on the mysterious phone call Elaine received? I am certain that it was him. You would be correct, Greg. It definitely was. Thank you so much, Greg, for your thoughts. We love them every single week. And now it's time to close Greg's sack lunch. All right, my favorite Elaine moments. When she calls Kramer a jackass. I just love it. It's the best. There's something about Elaine swearing that makes me laugh every time. And then that moment where she almost swears at Jerry and then smiling for the camera. Just that sudden turn to smile and pose always makes me laugh. And my final notes for the episode. JLD gets a lot of screen time in this episode. No complaints about that. But I think this plot just goes nowhere in a sense. Not to get bogged down in facts like the Hippocratic Oath or the chart stuff, like I told you guys before, that stuff, that wouldn't really happen. Because a lot of times in comedy, you just need to let certain details and facts go in order to allow the funny to happen. But this plot just gets so repetitive with each doctor doing kind of the same thing to Elaine that I think it does kind of matter that not every doctor would do this. I do think the premise is a bit funny, but perhaps they just could have executed it better. Not wearing a gown is such a weak way to get to the point of her being blacklisted by all the doctors in New York City and beyond. And this might sound kind of weird, but I wanted to know more about her rash. But I do want to say, I like that they picked something innocuous, like a rash. It's not like it's something that could have been potentially more dangerous. Like, oh, I have this pain in my side, or I'm having like really bad diarrhea or something, like something that could have maybe been really, really bad or something more serious. So the rash is kind of the perfect thing. But I think what was needed is some kind of stakes applied. Like maybe she doesn't want a boyfriend to know about her rash, or maybe, I don't know, there's some reason she really needs this rash taken care of besides the fact that it's uncomfortable. I think that just would have made it a little bit more compelling. I also think it could have been fun to involve Kramer in like an ointment thing, or Kramer. I feel like this is another situation where Kramer would try and get involved with his own doctor. Like he had that herbalist, right? That like he tried to get Jerry and George to go to. Anything except this, like seeing the same thing over and over again. It just got a little repetitive and it wasn't as funny the more times it happened. JLD definitely does the best she can, but overall, we just needed something stronger in the script for Elaine. And I think that's all I can say about the package. Please be sure to follow Hot and Heavy on social media at Hot Heavy Elaine on Instagram, on TikTok at Elaine Bennis Podcast. And if you'd like to email me, please do at elainepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you again for listening, and I will see you next time.